The pigeon camera. Before drones and satellites became the kings of surveillance, the military thought, hey, pigeons always find their way home. Why not use them as tiny spies? So they strapped lightweight cameras onto homing pigeons. The camera was automatic, snapping photos as the bird flew overhead. It sounded genius on paper. In practice, not so much. Pigeons don't follow spy missions. Sometimes they wandered off, sometimes they just didn't come back, and the photos often showed rooftops, blurry fields, or even the pigeon's own feathers. Yet these bird photographers were actually used in World War I and tested again in the Cold War. Imagine generals sitting around a table, seriously waiting for a pigeon to return with state secrets. It sounds more like a comedy sketch than intelligence work. The shoe phone. Everyone laughs at Get Smart and its famous shoe phone, but here's the twist. It wasn't entirely made up. During the Cold War, engineers really experimented with hiding communication devices inside shoes. The idea was to hollow out the heel and slip in a tiny transmitter. But to actually use it, the spy had to take off the shoe and hold it up to their ear like a loafer-shaped cell phone. Imagine sitting in a high-level meeting, then suddenly pulling off your wingtip and whispering into it. Not exactly subtle. The tech itself worked, but the design was laughably impractical. It quickly became one of the many ideas that looked cooler in the lab than in real life. The lipstick pistol. Nicknamed the Kiss of Death, this was a Soviet invention that looked like an ordinary lipstick tube but was secretly a tiny gun. It could fire a single 4.5mm bullet at close range. The concept was that female spies could carry it in their purses without raising suspicion. The downside? You only got one shot. Miss your target and you're done. Plus, if guards searched your bag and spotted the unusual lipstick, your cover was blown. While it sounds like something straight out of a spy thriller, in practice it was more of a novelty weapon than a reliable tool. Still, it shows how far the KGB went to disguise weapons in everyday objects. The hollowed-out coin. Sometimes spies didn't need weapons, just a sneaky way to hide messages. Enter the hollowed-out coin. These were normal-looking nickels, quarters, or rubies with a hidden compartment inside. Agents could slip microfilm or coded notes into the coin and pass it along without anyone noticing. But here's where it gets funny. In 1953, a young paperboy in Brooklyn found one of these hollow nickels, dropped it, and saw it crack open. Inside was a tiny piece of microfilm containing Soviet code. The FBI got hold of it, sparking one of the biggest spy cases of the era. So while the gadget was clever, it was also fragile. One clumsy mistake turned top-secret spycraft into front-page news. The umbrella gun. Not all gadgets were silly, some were terrifying. The infamous umbrella gun looked like a regular umbrella, but could inject a tiny poison pellet into a target. In 1978, Bulgarian dissident Georgy Markov was assassinated in London this way. He felt a sharp sting in his leg while waiting for a bus, saw a man with an umbrella walk away, and days later, he died from ricin poisoning. It sounds like a movie plot, but it was real. What makes it weird isn't the effectiveness. It worked. It's that assassins were walking around London with umbrellas like some kind of secret agent fashion show. It became one of the most legendary examples of Cold War gadgetry crossing into real-world horror. Spy cats. If there were a prize for the silliest project, the CIA's acoustic kitty would win. In the 1960s, they literally tried to turn cats into living spy devices. Engineers implanted microphones, transmitters, and antennas into cats, then planned to release them near Soviet officials to eavesdrop on conversations. But here's the problem. Cats are cats. They don't follow orders, they don't care about politics, and they definitely don't care about the CIA. The first test ended in disaster when the cat immediately ran into traffic and was killed. After spending millions of dollars, the CIA quietly canceled the project. Today, it's remembered as one of the strangest, most misguided attempts at espionage ever. Insect drones. Spies weren't done experimenting with animals, or at least animal-inspired machines. Enter the insect drones. The CIA built tiny mechanical dragonflies with miniature engines, hoping they could buzz their way into windows and record conversations. They even tried attaching microphones to real beetles. But the 1960s tech wasn't ready for this idea. The drones were too noisy, couldn't fly straight, and their batteries died quickly. Still, these experiments weren't a complete waste. They were the ancestors of the micro-drones we actually use today. So while Cold War bug drones were silly, they were also decades ahead of their time. Hidden cameras everywhere. Cameras were the bread and butter of spy work. But instead of sleek high-tech gear, many Cold War spy cameras looked ridiculous. They were hidden in cigarette packs, fountain pens, belt buckles, and even neckties. Some were so tiny they could only take one blurry photo before running out of film. And yet, the funniest part wasn't the design, it was the spies using them. Tourists accidentally snapping endless photos of factories or restricted zones quickly became obvious. The gadgets could be clever, but human behavior often blew the cover faster than any hidden lens. It turns out, acting natural was harder than hiding a camera in your tie. The Dead Drop Brat. This one is straight out of a dark comedy. Intelligence agencies sometimes needed to leave secret notes or items in public without being spotted. Their solution? A dead rat. They would hollow out the inside of a real rat carcass and use it as a container for microfilm or messages. Spies would leave the rat in an alley or near a dumpster, and another agent would pick it up. The logic was simple. Nobody wants to touch a dead rat, so it wouldn't draw suspicion. The flaw? Hungry stray cats or dogs sometimes made off with the package. Imagine an agent reporting to headquarters, "Sorry, the message was eaten by a stray dog." Invisible ink pens. Invisible ink may give the impression that it is something that would be found in spy kits for children, yet it was a valid way of communication during the Cold War. Agents were equipped with writing utensils that were capable of writing in invisible ink. Only when exposed to particular illumination or heat would messages written with this ink be able to be revealed. There were times, though, when the absurdity of something came not from the ink used to write it, but from the writing itself. Agents would scrawl invisible comments on laundry tickets, letters, or even inside Bibles. Furthermore, if the chemicals that are utilized for decoding were not administered in the proper manner, the message would continue to be concealed until it was eventually revealed, even from the same individual for whom it was originally intended. It was a game of secret pen pals that had significant consequences on a global scale, because the stakes were tremendous. The Pite Gun. The Pite Gun was one of those bizarre, almost theatrical inventions that still managed to be terrifying because it worked. At first glance, the object looked exactly like a gentleman's smoking pipe, complete with a wooden bowl, stem, and mouthpiece. Only when you handled it closely would you find the tiny, carefully engineered firing mechanism tucked inside the hollow stem. The mechanism was built around a single shot barrel and a trigger that could be operated with a subtle movement of the fingers or by a hidden button. A trained operative could cradle the pipe, take an unbothered puff, and in a heartbeat change a casual prop into a deadly weapon. Like the lipstick pistol, the Pite Gun suffered from a major practical flaw. It was disposable. Once fired, the mechanism either jammed or was so obviously altered that the user's cover was blown and the device lost all further utility. That made the weapon useful only for one desperate moment. Despite that limitation, it captured the Cold War mindset perfectly. Intelligence services and covert units on both sides invested in creative ways to turn innocuous personal items into tools for assassination, sabotage, or escape. The Pite Gun sat at the intersection of craftsmanship and paranoia. It was proof that designers were willing to trade reliability and longevity for stealth. Beyond its mechanical novelty, the Pite Gun also carried symbolic weight. It represented how everyday life during that period could hide lethal intent. A bespectacled man in a cafe, a tourist on a park bench, or an elegant smoker at a diplomatic reception could all appear utterly harmless while carrying an instrument capable of killing at close range. That ambiguity forced counterintelligence agencies to develop new detection methods, change protocols for meetings and public appearances, and train operatives to be suspicious of even the smallest personal items.